Hey everyone, it's Alex, and an absolutely massive patch has dropped in Marvel Snap. It has several features that we've been really hoping for the longest time, starting with customizable selectable borders. This is absolutely huge. We finally get an opportunity to upgrade some of our cards past the point in which, we don't want to lose that fancy border that just fits absolutely perfectly. We can get it to infinite, we can split it, and then we can customize the border. You're going to have an option at the top of each card to essentially choose your most customizable version. It's going to be really cool to see that. In fact, I got some content coming out tomorrow that's going to be highlighting this brand new feature. I can't wait for it. So subscribe if you're not subscribed already. You're going to watch this video. It's been literally a year in the making. I cannot wait to show you guys what I've got planned. But honestly, this feature is probably the most sought after feature in Marvel Snap for the longest time. And it's great because it goes to show you what collecting in Snap is and how important it is for the average player. Because we don't clamor for, I mean we do, but we didn't clamor for oh, we need spectator mode or we need this and that. People were clamoring for customizable borders at the end of the day, and it's finally here. And the development team did say they do have plans to introduce, for instance, consumables perhaps that might be able to be applied to specific cards or specific heroes or whatever to kind of beef up the effects on the card, which is really, really interesting. So they are going fully forward with this customizable border feature with some additional stuff as well. I can't wait to see what that looks like. We don't have any information about it yet, just the hint that stuff is coming. We go to the next thing. We are getting a graveyard finally, and this has been something that I benefit from. I'll be streaming on Twitch and I'll be reading chat and something will happen. Well, I didn't even see what happened there. What happened there, right? And naturally, I have Untapped that helps me kind of keep track of that, but now we have an actual in-game graveyard that does the same thing. This is huge because on mobile, people will actually be able to track this stuff effectively, which I think is really valuable for players. Good addition to the game. It should have been here all along. I'm glad it's finally here, and we're starting to feel a little more feature complete with Marvel Snap. This is a great addition. I am so glad. So far, we're knocking it out of the park, and I know this one is seeming small, but I know that based on prior conversations with Second Dinner, that this was actually a very large change from a programming and engineering perspective. The opportunity to actually undo your end turn. This is huge because, in the past, there was the, basically, if you wanted to min-max your opportunity to win cubes, you usually snapped near the end of the turn in order to make sure that they were locked in. You added the stress of oh, they just snapped, what do I do? Oh, everything's going red and I have to just accept the turn or retreat, and you have very little time to actually think about it. With this, if they snap on you, you're able to undo your turn and adjust your board state, because a snap is additional information. A snap might indicate they have something that you didn't think they had before. It's a completely different game once they snap. And so the ability to undo turn is key. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you just play a card, you're whoa, I put that in the wrong spot, undo and change it, right? If you both lock in your turns, the turn occurs. If they snap on you and you've locked in your turn, what you get is that brief little 3, 4, 5 second window like you usually do to undo your turn, change things, and relock it in, okay? So a really, really good change to the competitiveness of Marvel Snap. This was a change that had to happen. I think that you're going to really appreciate that. Now we move on to the balance changes. This is actually crazy. I called this change on the Snapchat. I said that Elsa Bloodstone would likely be changed to a card that affects all the locations, and but I was assuming she would stay at a 3 cost. I thought that would have been enough, but no, they did change it from a 2/3 to a 3/3, and then did add back that fact that they can now buff all the locations, but they also are now buffing once again before the on reveal. So a Spider-Man will come in, get buffed, and then move out of the location. That's kind of the way it worked before, and not the way it worked afterwards. Because a card as they mentioned in the note there, Brood would fill the location and get buffed. Now that doesn't work, right? So we're moving back to the original iteration of Elsa Bloodstone, which I think is better. It was much more clear and concise with the way it worked. And having it now we have basically the 3 cost cards, Kyra, Luke Cage, being a board affecting presence. It's kind of interesting. You're starting to see that change, right? Shadow King, 1 lane, Elsa Bloodstone, Luke Cage, whatever, multiple lanes. It's interesting to see how at 3 costs we're now able to attack and affect the entire board. I think it's a good change, and I think we're starting to see the identity of these types of effect shaping up in Marvel Snap. So I do like to change to Elsa Bloodstone, which is ironically seeing a lot more play now, and hopefully this helps it kind of propel to the next stage. We have Miek here. Now Miek I've always loved Miek. And I don't want to like kind of pat myself on the back, but I'm going to, damn it. I called this change too on the Snapchat. I had suggested that Miek could go from basically like, well, I always thought his power was fine and his power remains, but being able to actually choose where you move him was the suggestion I made. And here we are, it's happening, and this is great. I think this is a huge buff to Miek, because the betrayal of Miek moving in a way you didn't want was like often really problematic and had him cut from a lot of decks. Now essentially he gets like a Nightcrawler effect once you discard cards. That is so damn good. This is actually probably one of the, I don't want to say one of the strongest discard cards at the, it is going to be the strongest one drop discard card. Well, no, I mean Black Knight is not, I don't know what the hell I'm saying, but what I am saying is that this is a definite massive buff, and I'm going to be testing Miek. I think this is huge. The opportunity and the agency to move him where you want is massive, and he was already strong enough power-wise. Like, as a one cost, he was getting to some pretty big numbers, even without the Wong and Wombo combos type stuff. So, good card, good change, you'll love to see it. Then we go to Mantis. Now, this is kind of funny because this patch change, I think it snuck out last patch for like a couple hours, and they're like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to be in there, and they took it out and said, oh, I don't know what you guys are talking about, and then here it is, the exact same text. I mean, I'm kind of reserved on this change. Going from a 2-3 to a 2-2 is, well, a nerf, but you do have the board-wide effect of copying something from their hand. In the development note, they do mention something like a Venom would be huge to pick up because it does retain the buffs. That is true, but like, at the end of the day, like, I don't know if this is quite good enough. I can see this being a 2-3 at the end of the day before it's even remotely playable. Like, I don't know if this is that great, because I'm saying that's going to be the most broken part in the patch, but an interesting change nonetheless. And overall, we'll see where Mantis lands, but I'm not too excited about this one. It still feels a little random and hard to actually execute on, but the Cable change is pretty cool. Cable is pretty damn cool because you go from a 3-4 to a 2-3, so you're staying at relatively premium stat line, and actually it's a buff from its prior 2-2, and you get the same effect. So if I think that Cable's worth playing at 2 costs. Like, I've actually liked Cable from a disruption and information standpoint. He's good in Conquest for that perspective, but as a 3-4 he was just too expensive, not worth it. And he actually he buffs up, I guess, theoretically Loki now and stuff like that, so you might see him sneaking into some Loki decks and stuff like that. Good change. Like to see Cable getting some love. We go to Time Stone, and this is huge. This is a massive nerf, going from a +1 energy next turn that provides you with a drawn card to draw a card and give that card -1 cost. It's kind of like what Chavez does now, except Chavez buffs the card, this one reduces its cost. This is a huge nerf. This prevents you from like confidently playing Time Stone into like, well, I get to ramp out into, you know, Pro X, or I get to ramp out into Double Dinosaur early or whatever, so I can get a cheaper Scar. And this changes the scope of the way this card is played. It's had to happen. Ultimately, what's going to happen is you're probably going to see Psylocke be reintroduced into a lot of the Thanos-based decks to compensate for this. But I mean, it's still drawing a card, which is huge. They did note in developer note, like, hey, like maybe Soulstone got the hit too early, and it was Time Stone that was the problem all along. Definitely a nerf to Thanos, though, because this really prevents its rampability. And it's kind of funny because with the change to Lockjaw, this ramp-style lockdown Thanos Professor X, Alioth archetype is making a comeback, and now this kicks it directly in the pants. So probably a necessary change, very prudent by the development team there. Mbaku, same stat line, and I still think he's bad, but he goes from jumping to a random location at the end of a game to jumping to the one with the least power, similar to Proxima Midnight. The thing I thought here was like, well, why not just give him the angel treatment? You've now shown that like the angel treatment is possible. Jump from the hand, damn it, because you know Mbaku is basically Quicksilver. He's gonna be in your hand, and no, they decided not to do that. And I mean, being a little conservative here, which is fine, but ultimately I do think that Mbaku jumping out of your hand might not be the most broken thing in the world, and if it is, then it's Mbaku's time to shine, damn it. But anyways, a conservative change, but one that I think does make the card theoretically better, but probably not in practice any better at all. And we'll see where it goes from there. And we got Yondu. Now, this is important because this looks like a forward-looking change where at first it's like, man, what is this change, right? Destroying the top card of your opponent's deck to destroying the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck. Now, in the development note, they do mention that there's some upcoming cards that they plan to synergize directly with Yondu. That's important because if you think very critically, if you're destroying the lowest cost card in your hand, and yeah, in the deck, if you're playing it on one, then like, okay, maybe you're knocking out their another 1 cost or a 2-drop and delaying their actual play pattern, which is cool. But if you're playing it on like turn 3 or 4, it's like, okay, you're just thinning their deck so they can draw their 6 or 5 or whatever, right? So, but if there's going to be cards that synergize with Yondu in the future, then perhaps we don't have all the information yet, and maybe this card's actually going to be making a bit of a comeback. They're probably looking for ways to kind of modify the Destroy archetype. I would see that being prudent, because if you think about what discard was, the increasive play of like Black Knight came after Black Knight's buff, and that gave you kind of multiple play lines with with discard. You had the MODOK Hela discard, you had the Black Knight discard. Now you have the Corvus Glaive Proxima style discard. All these different variations, and that's cool within a specific archetype. And maybe Yondu and these new cards coming out in the future can provide some variability to the way Destroy's played, which I would like. So this is a kind of like, we're changing this for the future consideration type change. So we'll see where this ends up being in the future. And Leech. Wow, this card sucks now. Going from at the start of turn 6, remove all abilities from opponent's cards in your opponent's hand, to on reveal, remove the text from each card with an on reveal ability in your opponent's hand. This is a major, I don't want to say a major nerf, it's a change. They do note that, like, obviously Shang-Chi's can flip the board state, Elias can flip the board states, Legions can flip the board state. There's a lot of cards with on reveal that can be played on like turn 5 or 6 or whatever that can be legitimately impactful. But with Leech, I think this is like, okay, we're going to make Leech a little not so good. So maybe Leech can disappear for a little bit. And so you guys don't think about Leech and you guys don't worry about Leech. And then when the time comes and you're like, hey, imagine we had Leech. Imagine Leech was a good card and this card wouldn't be a damn problem. And then people are like, hey, development team can be like, yo, we're going to buff Leech. And you guys can be thankful for it, right? This might be a bit of a mind game. I don't think so. I'm just joking in some ways. But honestly, I think they're just putting, like, they're giving Leech some time to sit out. Like, kind of what they did with Professor X last time. This is Leech's time to say, okay, we've made you bad enough that if no one plays you, we don't blame them, and maybe this is your timeout, right? So, Leech, probably unplayable, and but also an important card we probably will see in the future again. It's also worth noting they did some location updates. They did the location update on how locations trigger, but most importantly, you do have locations that are going to be a little less common. Camp Lehigh, Collapsed Mine, which is annoying as hell, Great Portal, Hotel Inferno, Shuri's Lab, Lamentis. You can read the list. These are good changes. Some of these were really annoying and obviously favor Destroy. And they also worth noting that Subterranea now only puts 4 rocks in your deck and not 5. I guess a buff to just playing Snap. I don't know. Subterranea enjoyers out there with Darkhawk in shambles, of course. And that takes us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I got an absolute fire video that's dropping tomorrow. Where we're going to be doing something absolutely insane with the custom border feature. I can't wait to show you guys, and we'll see you in that next Marvel Snap video.